In the echoing halls of Assyrian palaces, where once the voices of kings and priests resounded with certainty, a new sound emerges, the distant, ominous rumble of change. The mighty empire that once seemed eternal now stands on the precipice of collapse. Shadows lengthen over Nineveh and Ashur, and the heartbeat of a civilization begins to falter. This is the story of decline, a saga of pride and retribution, of enemies at the gates, and of secrets lost beneath the sands. Welcome to the third chapter of our journey, the fall of Assyria. The warning signs were subtle at first, almost invisible to those who lived within the empire's protective embrace. The fields around the great cities yielded less with each passing year, the rivers, once lifelines for trade and agriculture, grew unpredictable, sometimes flooding, sometimes vanishing into dust. The people whispered that the gods were displeased. Farmers, artisans, and nobles alike scanned the sky for omens, hoping for a sign that the balance would be restored. But the gods remained silent, and the cracks in Assyria's foundations began to widen. Inside the palaces, the kings of Assyria clung to the rituals and traditions that had once brought them glory. They offered greater sacrifices, built ever more impressive temples, and commissioned monuments that reached for the heavens. But behind the gilded walls and grand ceremonies, anxiety festered. The burden of power grew heavier, and the king's advisors brought troubling news from every corner of the empire. Rebellions flared in distant provinces. Governors sent urgent pleas for troops and grain. Tax collectors returned empty-handed, their faces drawn with the fear of failure. The empire's enemies watched, waiting for the moment to strike. For centuries, Assyria's armies had marched across deserts and mountains, crushing resistance with unmatched ferocity. But now, those same armies were stretched thin, weary from endless campaigns. The relentless cycle of war and conquest, once the source of Assyria's strength, had become a curse. Soldiers conscripted from distant lands sometimes deserted or turned against their masters. Mercenaries fought without loyalty, their swords guided by gold alone. As the 7th century BCE dawned, the threats multiplied. To the east, the Medes, fierce warriors from the Iranian plateau, grew in power and ambition. To the south, Babylon, long a rival and sometimes a vassal, simmered with resentment, its people yearning for freedom and revenge. Smaller kingdoms and nomadic tribes, sensing weakness, began to defy Assyrian authority. The web that had held the empire together for centuries began to unravel. Within Nineveh, the imperial capital, the mood shifted from triumph to tension. The city still dazzled with its palaces, gardens, and libraries, but an undercurrent of fear ran through its streets. The king's decrees became harsher, punishments for dissent grew more severe. Spies and informants prowled the markets and temples, searching for any sign of rebellion. Some whispered that the king had lost the favor of Ashur, the great god who had once promised Assyria dominion over all. The Assyrians responded to crisis as they always had, with displays of strength and divine authority. New armies were raised, new walls erected, new rituals performed in the hopes of turning the tide. But the resources to sustain these efforts dwindled. The treasury, once overflowing with tribute from conquered lands, now struggled to fund even basic defense. Famine stalked the countryside, driving desperate families to the cities where food was scarcely more plentiful. In this climate of uncertainty, old rivalries within the royal court reignited. Generals and governors jockeyed for power, each seeking to protect their own interests as the empire faltered. Paranoia took root. Accusations of treason became common, and the king's inner circle grew ever smaller, trust eroded by suspicion and fear. Some believed that hidden enemies plotted not just in foreign lands, but within the very heart of Assyria itself. The empire's legendary resilience was tested as never before. In the west, Egyptian pharaohs sent armies to challenge Assyrian dominance in the Levant. In the north, the kingdom of Urartu launched raids on border fortresses. In the south, Babylon's leaders stirred revolt, inspiring subject peoples to rise against their Assyrian overlords. The Medes and Babylonians, once disparate foes, forged an alliance, united by a single goal, the destruction of Assyria. The siege of Assur, the ancient spiritual center of the empire, marked a turning point. The city's defenders fought with desperate courage, invoking the gods in every charge and counterattack. But the enemy armies were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. When the city fell, its temples were sacked, its inhabitants slaughtered or enslaved. The shock reverberated across the empire. If even Assur could fall, nowhere was safe. Nineveh, the proud capital, became the last great hope. Behind its massive walls, the king and his court prepared for the final struggle. Refugees poured in from the countryside, stories of terror and loss spreading like wildfire. The city's supplies dwindled as the besieging armies encircled it. For months, defenders repelled assault after assault, their resolve fueled by desperation and faith. The priests led prayers on the ziggurat, offering sacrifices to appease the gods. But the heavens remained silent. Legend tells of fire and flood as Nineveh's defenses finally crumbled. Some say the Tigris River, swollen by storms, breached the city's walls, allowing the invaders to pour in. Others claim that traders within the city opened the gates in exchange for mercy. The truth is lost to history, but the result is clear: Nineveh, the jewel of Assyria, was consumed by chaos. Palaces burned, libraries were plundered or destroyed, and the streets ran red with blood. The fall of Nineveh marked the end of an era. Across the empire, cities surrendered or were razed, their populations scattered. The gods of Assyria, once invoked with such pride and certainty, seemed to turn their faces away. Survivors fled into exile, carrying with them memories and stories of a world lost. The conquerors, Medes, Babylonians, and others, divided the spoils, each claiming a piece of the fallen giant. Yet even in defeat, the legacy of Assyria endured. The conquerors could topple walls and burn palaces, but they could not erase the memory of what had been. In distant lands, Assyrian art, language, and customs lived on, woven into the fabric of new empires. The stories of its kings and heroes, its rise and fall, became lessons for generations to come. Why did Assyria fall? Historians and archaeologists have debated this question for centuries. Some point to overextension: the empire grew too vast to govern effectively, its armies stretched beyond their limits. Others blame environmental change, drought, famine, and shifting rivers undermined the agricultural base. Still others emphasize internal strife, the corrosive effects of suspicion, rivalry, and fear. Perhaps the answer lies in the combination of these forces, a perfect storm that no power, however mighty, could withstand forever. The pride that fueled Assyria's conquests became the weakness that hastened its downfall. The very systems that had once maintained order, fear, discipline, divine authority, proved brittle when tested by crisis. In the aftermath, the ruins of Assyria stood as haunting reminders of past greatness. Travelers and conquerors marveled at the remnants, the winged bulls that guarded empty gates, the shattered ziggurats, the fragments of tablets and inscriptions. In the silence of deserted cities, the wind carried the echoes of prayers, the footfalls of kings, the laments of survivors. But the story does not end here. Beneath the ashes, seeds of renewal are sown. The knowledge preserved in Assyrian libraries survived in distant lands. The memory of its achievements inspired those who came after. And the mysteries of its fall, the secrets hidden in burned palaces, the unanswered questions in broken tablets, continue to fascinate and challenge us. What was lost when Assyria fell? What wisdom vanished in the flames? What tales remain untold? These are the riddles that draw us to the ruins, that compel us to sift the dust of ages in search of meaning. In the next chapter, we will follow these threads further, exploring the legacy that Assyria left behind, the influence that shaped the world long after its armies marched no more. But what was it like for those who survived these cataclysmic events? Imagine the terror and confusion as the city walls trembled under siege, as families huddled in fear by candlelight, praying for deliverance. Imagine the chaos in the aftermath, as smoke blanketed the sky and the cries of the wounded echoed through empty streets. Entire generations were displaced, forced to wander foreign lands with nothing but memories and grief. For many, the loss was not only material but spiritual. The gods of Assyria, once so present in daily life, seemed to fall silent. Priests and oracles searched for answers, interpreting omens in the ashes, but found only more questions. Was this the anger of the gods or the inevitable cycle of history? The survivors struggled to reconcile their faith with their fate, clinging to the fragments of their culture as the world changed around them. In the conquered cities, conquerors sought to erase Assyrian identity, but some traditions endured in secret. Songs and stories were whispered by firesides. Amulets and relics were hidden away, passed down as tokens of a vanished world. The memory of Assyria became a legend, a cautionary tale, and a source of wonder for those who came later. Yet, amid the ruins, new powers emerged. Babylon rose to prominence, and the Medes carved out their own domains. They borrowed from Assyrian methods, its laws, its military tactics, even its art. The legacy of Assyria became the foundation for new empires, its influence rippling outward across centuries. Archaeologists today still uncover evidence of this dramatic fall. Charred layers of destruction in ancient cities, shattered statues, hastily buried treasures, all tell the story of a civilization's final days. Each artifact is a silent witness, each inscription a fragment of a much larger narrative that continues to intrigue and challenge us. Some believe that hidden beneath the sands of Mesopotamia, secrets of Assyria's end remain undiscovered. Lost libraries, unopened tombs, and cryptic tablets that could rewrite history. What knowledge still sleeps in darkness, waiting for the day it will see the light again? What truths about power, hubris, and human resilience are yet to be revealed? There are tales, too, of curses and prophecies that foretold the fall. Stories of visions seen by priests in the last days, of warnings ignored by rulers blinded by pride. Did the Assyrians sense their doom, or were they simply swept aside by forces beyond their control? The mystery lingers, fueling our fascination with their fate. As we look back on the twilight of Assyria, one thing becomes clear: the end of an empire is never truly an end, but a transformation. The fall is as much a part of the story as the rise. It is in the ruins and the silence that we find the seeds of future greatness, and the lessons that echo through time. The drama, the sorrow, and the hope of Assyria's last days still speak to us across millennia. Their fall is a warning and a promise, a reminder that nothing lasts forever, but also that every ending is the beginning of something new. The ghosts of Assyria walk with us still, urging us to remember, to question, and to seek the truths that lie hidden in the shadows of history. If you wish to uncover the final secrets and enduring mysteries of Assyria, join us for the concluding episode of Kingdoms of Mystery. Like, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss the end of this epic journey, where every legend carries a grain of truth.